6:02, and I will call to order the September 26, 2016 meeting of the East Hampton Conservation Commission. The meeting is being recorded. Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items?
That would be mine.
Sure, in a few minutes.
We had talked.
Can you just identify yourself
Okay.
for the record?
My name is Anthony Oshetsky. I'm the president of the Mount Tom Owners Association. We are still finishing up our condo complex. The builders have one more unit to sell, and we had spoken to them a little while ago about this last item that I believe you were out there to visit with us about the entrance to the old barn area. And what we wanted to do was about having that surface tarred right to the concrete area of the barn. I've got some sketches and prints of that right now here, and that's what I wanted to discuss. We had an environmental engineer come out to take a look at this, and it's going to be a real expensive thing just for him to do some kind of a study, and that's what I can't figure out, just to see what the additional runoff and rain would be from that bit of asphalt that they're going to put in. Okay. So we was wondering if we could do, what was it, an RDA, I believe was the term for the paperwork, to have this thing looked at.
Do you have the papers that you mentioned?
Yes, I do. Here's a sketch for the builders. I'm doing this up just to show what we were going to do in that area.
Journey.
That may be slightly smaller depending on what we think the builders would put in, but that was one of the things that's going to be proposed would be tarred. They finished the rest of the asphalt for the whole condo, and this is the last item. They had to do landscaping, and they're going to come in and clean out all the stuff that they didn't do right the first time. So it's going to be.
And they have, for areas in buffer zone, they have until October 10th.
No, they said that was not going to be on their permit or something. This is what I'm trying to find out. I'm not sure how this works.
No, this is not on their permit, but the work that they're doing. I guess I know Dan Buttrick had reached out about the expiration date to the builders, correct?
They've been doing the cleanup in the barn area and around the areas yet. Okay. And we just finished taking the steel beams off of the barn. Concrete's going to stay. And that just has to be hauled out of there. The landscaping is going to be done to supposedly our satisfaction. We were hoping to start in the next couple of weeks.
You need this?
Those two copies if you like.
Actually, if you want, I could make a copy.
No, keep them. I got more.
All right.
And that's the only concern. The roads are finished here. You just want to go from here to there. And we had I talked to Rob Levesque from Levesque Associates about doing some study which I thought was going to be required, and that was an exorbitant amount of over $5,000 just to do a study for what, and I can't see why, and our association can't really afford that. So if there's anything else we might be able to do.
Well, you can absolutely file an RDA, and then that's when the commission would render a formal opinion.
Okay.
As to whether or not this requires filing a notice of intent or is insignificant and does not require a notice of intent.
How long would this take?
So the commission's schedule is posted on the city's website under forms and documents, and so deadline depends on how many weeks there are between meetings.
2 weeks, I think.
Well, we meet twice a month, but October's so October 3rd is the submittal deadline for the October 17th meeting. Because I can't remember this stuff off the top of my head. So, a week from tonight is the next submittal deadline. So if you were to submit your paperwork for an RDA, even electronically by next Monday,
okay.
Then you would be on the October 17th agenda, and the reason it's October 17th is because the 10th is a holiday.
Yeah, that's true.
So we can't meet when there's a holiday.
Okay.
And then after that, it would be October 11th for the 24th. The meetings, because we like to have 2 a month.
The only thing we're trying to do is find out when they stop making asphalt for the season. That's our big thing right there.
Depends, and usually,
On
they're
the
usually
weather.
good through Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Okay, that would be good.
Plants usually shut down by early December. Right? Depends on the weather.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
And
mean, so, yeah, generally, it's, yeah, you can't pin it down. I'm looking to the audience because these guys deal with paving too. So,
basically, it's all you need to know. So
Okay.
I've got a copy of the form. I did it online.
and there's a checklist that
Yeah.
accompanies it to help guide you through the
Mhm.
process. Other things to remind you of, you do need to send a copy to DEP in Springfield.
Okay.
They get a copy, it's the commission's decision, but they get a copy, that's on the checklist.
Oh, okay.
And also, you would need to have the legal notice published in the Daily Hampshire Gazette, no later than Monday, October 7th.
Okay,
Okay.
we could do that. And
Okay.
that's on the checklist also?
It should be, and there's some sample language you can
Okay.
copy. Okay?
Oh, very good.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, thanks.
Over, thank you all for your patience. Okay, any other public concerns, non-agenda items? Moving on to the first public meeting, a request for determination of applicability filed by Bernard Gall, sewer manhole in connection to municipal sewer at 33 Florence Road, map 115, lot 18. So, the commission received the application, scheduled a site visit. We performed the site visit on September 19th. And that was myself, Dan Buttrick, Jay Ryan, and Julie Busa. I don't think you didn't, oh my gosh, I heard, and you were not there. Also, Mr. Gall and Mr. Darnold. And we viewed the area. Does anyone want to make any comments? Report
Was
back,
there again?
SC11.
You, me, you.
Yeah.
You.
Yes.
Okay, yep, got it.
We dug a small hole to look at the soils, which we dug approximately 12 inches forward of the fence towards the road. And we reported colors as 10YR41 or possibly 42.
Oh, no,
Not that!
with no redoxymorphic features.
Very faint ones, but
Faint, but. That's a movement. Right,
I think tannins.
probably. I think, yeah, right behind the bush. I guess the one thing that I would like to put in the minutes is that, we should not be, this is not a presumptive approval of the wetland boundary, because there appears to be bordering vegetated wetland within 5 feet of the, backside of the fence. So the buffer zone extends closer to Florence Road than depicted, but the yard does not appear to be a wetland. Is there any, so to recap the previous meeting, we talked about erosion and sedimentation control barriers. Providing erosion and sedimentation control barriers in the event that when the work is performed, if groundwater is encountered, it is managed without impacting the adjacent wetlands. Does anyone have further discussion?
It occurs to me that because it's been so dry, if we do get rain, we're probably gonna see more surface travel rather than sit on in, which might cause further problems. I don't know if people think that would warrant having more detailed plans in terms of contingencies and erosion control barriers.
Before, during, or after, I guess.
before, during, or after construction.
Yeah. When are you concerned with the runoff? At what point would you be concerned with a runoff? I mean, I understand what you're
During
saying.
and after.
I mean, I can go out there when they're digging the hole and see what is happening at that point in time and make a decision then.
Do you have comments? No. Okay, I
No,
caught
I'm
motion.
listening. I'd be glad to answer questions or concerns.
And I think the assumption is, and forgive me if it's in the written form, but my assumption was that there would be loam and seed of the disturbed area.
Yes. I think we state that in our,
You probably do.
RDA.
There you go. Perfect. And I realize we're talking about a small area, but if Mr. Gall were to do this work toward the end of or outside the growing season, how would you finish the area so that it doesn't wash away?
It's fairly flat, nothing's going anywhere there. There's no source for a lot of water. Just got from the front of the house to the rear of the house. It's not like there's 500 feet behind it coming down. So I would put some hay down and whatever.
Just put some
Right.
straw down or something like that.
Yeah, but
hey,
hay,
no, I mean,
Yeah.
straw. Put
Straw.
straw.
straw. You like straw?
Everyone
Straw
likes
better.
straw so
Okay,
much
straw.
We
better.
don't like hay. We like
You don't
straw.
like hay?
Concom's don't like.
Hay can have weed seed, straw is less likely to have weed
Too
seed.
many
Less likely.
invasive
Yes,
Yes.
plants come from hay.
Yes.
That's why you got dislike?
We like straw.
That's
Okay.
where it comes from. Any other?
Yours is
Straw.
pretty flat.
It's flat, it's a maintained lawn, it's still more than, pasted off from the fence, it's still over 50 feet from the boundary. As much as we're all interested in the sewer connection to know where, this meets DEP's policy criteria for negative. So does anyone, without further discussion, unless there's further discussion, would anyone care to make a motion?
I just want to clarify what Julie said. So you're thinking that there should be something written up that if there is a storm event, once work starts, what will happen?
I would just like to see more detail about what the contingency plans are and how we intend to control the water, because I think we're gonna see some surprising things when it finally does start raining. That we maybe aren't used to seeing, or
been
like
a
the
while.
usual reactions, yeah.
Well, we do have the opportunity to condition, so we can condition requiring a dewatering plan. I believe there's reference to erosion sedimentation controls, so we can include a condition for those, and then mulching with straw to protect the surface. Do those. Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion?
What were those two conditions we just talked about?
Can you read my writing?
Strangely, no.
That'd be the scrawl.
Add watering plan.
Here, why don't you make a motion?
I move to approve the plan with the conditions. Is that just what?
Is the hearing,
So are we,
is the hearing closed yet?
it's a meeting, but
Okay,
yes.
Okay. Just a question about when you say require a dewatering plan. I guess I'm trying to figure out exactly what do you mean. We mean well points and.
No, I mean, it can be however you intend to control the discharge of groundwater from a sump in the
Okay.
event you need to do it so that it doesn't result in an adverse
I've done
impact.
dewatering plans for.
It doesn't need to be an elaborate 900
It's
gallon a
thick
minute well point
books.
manifold system.
Okay.
I
It
wanna
can be-
water the trees on the front lawn.
You can do that too.
They are
You can
parked.
just, you can just
Run it right up on the front lawn.
don't get it into the storm drain system on Florence Road if there is one. Is there one? So we're talking about positive versus negative determination. So maybe this will,
Negative.
right? We were trending that direction.
The buffer zone is defined in the regulations, but will not alter an area subject to protection of the act, therefore, they will notice of intent subject to the following conditions.
Okay, so move that we make a negative determination. 3, the work described in the request is within the buffer zone as defined in the regulations, but will not alter an area subject to protection under the act. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent subject to the following conditions. That there be a dewatering plan in writing prior to commencement of work. Erosion and sedimentation control, and that the area is mulched with straw to protect the surface after the work.
Would you like to also include pre-notification?
With like a 48-hour pre-notification prior to work starting.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nice.
So moved. Do you guys want to start signing it down there and I'll just fill that all out when it gets to me?
Thanks for the coaching, guys.
They love carrying that.
No, that's mine, that's the fill out.
Maybe I should, yeah.
Oh, that clock is right.
That's the very first one in 2013. And that's still ongoing?
I should get a certificate of compliance on that. What do you think? Get rid of it, yeah.
Carbon monoxide detectors actually detect carbon monoxide in our house. It's the smoke detectors that we have problems.
Then I'll get off the list.
So, wait, oh, we're waiting for, can we pass it down?
Yes.
Keep it moving. Because I have a few things to,
Do you want
actually.
to-
That's okay, it's in my brain. More or less. Okay.
Julie, that email go, 'cause I haven't seen it. See if it's
Did.
still trying to go.
I don't have the greatest memory.
Yeah, no, that's part of the problem.
No, I cannot. What was that?
You can sign into that.
Right,
Might want
yeah.
to try that maybe. Bless you.
Bless you, whatever it was.
Don't be a fool.
Oh, I thought it was taking forever to sign that thing.
You were.
No, I thought she was taking
Oh.
forever.
It's a really good signature.
Yeah, way better than yours.
Yeah, sure. There we go.
Did it come through? Still says it's sending. I tried to remember.
If you are so
Thanks for short vacation.
wait.
It did. It was brief.
Get signatures and make copies and you can walk away with this.
Great. That's efficiency.
We try. Don't always get there, but we try. What do you call
What the
it?
heck is
Oh,
this?
it's the second page, sorry.
We just struggle with that. you want to. Thank you. Be right back.
Oh, boy. Looks like I'm running in Russian.
We can forward a PDF if you'd like a copy as well. I scanned it and sent it to
If you do,
Leanne.
yeah, just have it on record would be nice,
Yeah,
thank you.
no problem.
Great.
Update with DEP,
No.
Davies property.
No.
They can email you a copy or something? Okay.
You all set?
I'm good.
Anything else, Bernie?
Good.
You good? Okay. And we're gonna move on. We actually have two requests for certificates of compliance. One is, we talked about last time. One is, for, what's it, PCT, the other is for City of East Hampton Town Beach. Town Beach, Neshawana Pond Fisherman Access. We received a request for certificate of compliance from Office of Fishing and Boating Access. Saw Terry Smith at Terry Smith Designed, permitted, built Town Beach, if anyone, I can't remember who was where, when.
It was all him.
It was the vast majority him. We saw him at the dedication ceremony last Thursday. Talked to him. One of the things that was missing from the application was an as-built or record drawing. So he is going to be providing that, so we'll just punt this
Wait
to our
for that,
next meeting
okay.
until we have that in hand. Because there were a couple of deviations from the original design that we
Right.
talked about. Yes, that's Terry. Terry?
Bird control.
Nope, Bill Cannon.
Bird control already. Hey, Bill Cannon, come on in.
You walk into the door?
Walked into Bernie.
Oh, walk into the brewery.
So, so we're actually gonna just, push that to our October
Third.
No, the third is the deadline.
Right,
For the
17th.
17th. And because these gentlemen are here and waiting, let's jump to their topics. So you,
So,
go ahead, Mark.
Yeah.
Can you pass that back to Joe?
Yes.
Thank you.
so we had filed a request for a certificate of compliance from Mutter Field. And as-built at last meeting. The commission was gonna go out on their own to look at it. They're in the process of removing the erosion control barriers. Pioneer Landscape hasn't got them all done, but they're probably about 50% or more removed.
So
I have a couple of questions.
you have a couple of questions.
Slash comments.
Okay.
Did we, I forget what we had said about removing erosion control barriers. Did we say remove everything? Or are we
Yes.
leaving some in place?
Yes, to remove the erosion control barriers, yes.
Because the ones along the water crossing that's close to the parking lot, I didn't see a lot of vegetation, I don't think I took a picture of that, but I'm not sure if there's enough vegetation in my mind for those to come out.
Okay.
I don't know if others had.
Do you have photos of that, Jay?
I don't have photos. She has some photos of some, Julie has photos of some erosion situations occurring, so.
Yeah.
Right. I noticed that, right. So in the, along the parking lot, they have, of course, with the dry weather, been fighting, getting stuff to grow, and there's quite a few weeds that are growing nicely, but they did double hydroseed it. So if you look at the underlying soils, for the most part, there's a thick layer of hydroseed and mat down. I did know.
On the slopes?
Yeah, on the slopes, on the slopes. There is one small area of erosion right at the bottom of
Is
the,
that the,
yeah, right at the top of the, or right at the top of the slope. In that area, which is, you know, an ongoing maintenance issue for the trust. And then a smaller area at the bottom of the ramp.
And I'm not sure exactly where the wetland line is there, but at the bottom of the ramp, that gravelly material is going down into the native or weedy vegetation, whichever it may be.
Right.
You didn't look that closely at what was growing.
Yeah,
I
right.
think it is.
Or it's
Right.
native to the site.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It is in a taller vegetation, the wetland boundaries, or the wetland did come up into the meadow, areas there. So there is some ongoing, you know, maintenance that needs to be done
This material is going down.
in that area.
Vegetation.
Do you have a site plan you could lay out, so we could look at this relative to?
Sure, where it is.
Crabgrass is doing well. It's doing well everywhere. Oh, so that's where it's washing into, is this rain garden
This is
somewhere?
up in the.
That's a rain garden?
Yeah, I think
The gravel's washing into it?
that's on
This is nice there. Really
there's
nice.
there's a better blow up.
So there was a little bit of erosion coming across the path here.
Yeah.
Is it coming down the hill through here?
It's coming down, I think it's
Yeah.
coming from the
So
top
you
of the
see
parking
this,
lot,
right,
down
right, you see
through.
that.
There's some accumulating here,
And
which
this
is what you're
is a
seeing
swale,
there.
right, this is a swale that, that goes towards the rain garden, which is right here, which would be, right here.
So this is
So,
the swale?
so this is,
or
this is a swale that this picture's taken,
Yeah.
because here's the ramp, this ramp area here. And that's the first today I looked at it again, and, you know, after all the dry weather and so forth, and the first erosion that we've seen coming down that way. And then, yeah, that's the path.
Path surface. And this is where?
This is going off.
So, yeah, some of those areas is really where, right, where they've taken up the erosion control barrier and the weeds, because the weeds were 2 or 3 feet tall in some areas. And where they took up the wattles, left a lot of exposed soil in there. And then, yes, that area there,
That needs to be
raked out,
together.
right. But I didn't see anything coming, this is the wetland, here's the bottom of the path, and I didn't see anything coming into the wetland area, it's all contained in this swale.
This is
This-
coming off this side into here as well. That's what this is.
Yeah, that little,
Flowing.
that
Here.
little.
And there's actually still a soft layer
Yes,
of
yeah,
it
sock,
going over
that's,
it.
yeah, being removed, right, they haven't removed that, some of that erosion in the sock in there.
And we're supposed to get rain tonight,
Multiple days, maybe.
Yeah, right, so,
which I think ultimately will be good for the site, but
right.
these are definitely areas of concern. Jay, this is just way too much fun.
I know.
Sorry.
Right. So, I know that, you know, they've been working with Pioneers to.
So
to
Pioneer
clean up.
will take care of these
Yes, we'll
things.
take care of that.
When might they be able
And,
to get to it?
Well, they were working out there, I believe today, and, you know, and I'm sure tomorrow they can.
Yeah, well, I'll have to I'll have to pin them down on a schedule.
Schedule to take care of.
And I'll have to pin them down on a little bit of an aggressive schedule, because they want to have a grand opening, they've already announced that, everything
Right.
else.
Yeah,
We
that's
can't get
October
things,
8th, right?
yeah, I mean, if we can't get things, you know, totally buttoned up by then, so be it. You know, just, we'll have to work through some of these things, but I wanna, I may wanna put some temporary, core logs down, in some of these areas in here, just to kind of stop the migration of some of the loose gravel, until we get more vegetation in there, you know, just, but it would be off of, it would be in addition to the construction, which is kind of finalized. This is kind of like ongoing maintenance that we can
Right.
kind of work on, you know.
My concern is, it's been a really tough year to get anything
Yes,
established.
exactly.
Jeez.
Yeah, and a lot of
And
the
they've
shrubs.
been watering this stuff, I've seen how they water,
yeah.
water the plants
yeah.
too.
They've been watering for months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For months, literally. You know, and we just couldn't afford to reprieve and do any of the landscaping or planting until we got, you know, expected rain weather and everything else. So they put it in under duress, so to speak, and, you know, we're
Right.
trying to keep up with, you know, trying to get things to grow and survive and everything else through the heat and the drought that we've had.
But I did notice even taking the silt fence up and the wattles up, you know, you got all that exposed soil, because it's so dry, it's like poof. You know, in the whole area.
I didn't see much soil moving, it was mostly the gravel material.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, kind of understandable, it's gonna move a little bit because it's loose. If there was, the edges were more heavily vegetated, it might stop that from, you know, migrating more. But we're gonna have to kind of work on that, making sure, you know, getting that vegetation wired. Hopefully, the cooler weather is here now, we can get a little bit of rain, and, you know, things can start to fill in a little bit more too.
I have to admit, I haven't investigated this edge right here, but will vegetation really help to stabilize that edge, because it looks pretty steep?
Yeah, I don't know, what was supposed to hold the material up here? Were you expecting just vegetation to hold it on that top?
Well, it's just a graded, we've got the guardrail out there, and it just kind of like tails off a little bit to the top of the boulder wall. And it's just all, just grassed in, and from a maintenance standpoint, I would leave it about 12 inches high or so at least. You know, because if it's not planted with material, it's not supposed to be mown like a lawn area. It's supposed to be meadow type of thing. So, you know, the grasses should remain high, and, you know, just kind of like a naturalistic area. That's the whole idea.
But so there's a gravel, not gravel, a boulder wall
Yes,
below
below,
that, and then
yes.
a.
Yeah, that's why it kind of looks like from this
So that's what's
vantage
really
point
gonna
right
hold
here,
it up.
it just kind of like sees it, you know, you don't see anything after
Like an
the,
endless swimming pool.
yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we've got that drop off here for the grading that creates the ramp.
Okay.
Going down the slope.
I think you're gonna see those gullies in
See-
the upper parking lot continue to grow though, they're not gonna
Right.
go away.
See, this is the stone infiltration trench along here, so this is graded to come over and into the stone infiltration trench, and then eventually get down to the rain garden over here. So that's, you know, again, you get that, unfortunately, it's, you know, soils are just not taking yet.
Was this always intended to be paved, or was that
Yes.
something we added later?
No, that was paved.
Yeah, because it's coming off of the East Street.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I
well.
think that's where the water is
It
coming. and
could be
down.
come down in here a little bit, but the intention was that we needed to kind of stabilize the edge of the East Street
Sure,
right here, and
right.
everything else with a little bit of a paved apron coming into the parking area. And, you know, to be honest with you, we kind of graded it so that it would kind of sheet flow. And kind of just spread out and move evenly across the parking area. So whether the stone on there hasn't compacted enough, it's still a little bit loose, might be, you know, susceptible to some rain kind of moving it a little bit too.
Was it
so.
mechanically compacted?
The stone, you know, it wasn't called for to be mechanically compacted because we anticipated that the traffic and everything else would be, but in light of it moving like this and everything else, it might, you know, we might I might get Pioneer out there with a you know, a roller,
Yeah,
a sidewalk
well,
type of
yeah,
roller
so-
to kind of compact it a little bit, maybe that will help.
Right, there's no drainage in these streets, so a lot of the road
I'm
drainage
sure
is
it's
coming
right
through
down
in
there,
here.
yeah.
So that's why we kinda started the swale way up here, to try to make sure that when they put a swale, it shows on here, to try to get the water to go around into the stone trench.
But that's another thing too, is that, this, I've anticipated that this should be really another heavily vegetated, buffer between the runoff coming off East Street and then it flowing onto a parking area. That vegetated area would help dissipate and slow down anything that kind of comes off the road. You know, it's still pretty thin out there yet to really have that effect. And, you know, so as a result, it all stems back to, you know, really kind of trying to cultivate the vegetative growth out there from here on out.
And keeping up with it maintenance wise and get rid of those weeds. I mean, the weeds are 3 or 4 feet tall. I mean, along this whole property line where the erosion control barriers, the sumac, I don't know if you noticed the sumac is 6, 8 feet tall. And that was just over the summer. It's like, my God, he's mowing his side, and of course, you know, we're trying to keep
Yeah, I
this side. But there's a row of sumac that's, I couldn't believe how it just took over.
Yeah, if that thing is really left there, I will have to talk to the guy that comes in. They contract out for somebody to come in and mow that too. And I know in the past he has mowed this over here because it's just been easier to kind of mow this whole thing, and this neighbor's been very accommodating and everything else, to maybe come in here and they mow this and kind of keep this vegetation down along the, I don't really want the sumac to kind of take over in here admittedly, so,
Sumac.
you know, we'll have to work on that. Again, it's a, you know, when the trust, when these get bequeathed, so to speak, to the trust, then you've got to handle a lot of upkeep and cultivation of this thing or else. And it usually takes a little bit of time for them to get up to speed on it and to kind of, you know, work things out.
So, from my point of view, it sounds like there are a few corrective actions that need to be taken. So, I'd rather we continue this discussion on the 17th.
Okay, that's your
And we'll get out there, yeah, that's our, the 10th is a holiday, so we, through the 17th and the 24th.
Yep.
Back to back Mondays.
Oh.
Awesome.
Columbus Day and Halloween on either side.
Yeah, right.
I don't get Columbus Day.
It's official.
Oh,
The
yeah.
day formerly known as Columbus Day.
Maybe
Right.
Thanksgiving. So.
Maybe Thanksgiving.
So that's your next meeting,
That's,
is the
yeah,
17th?
17th.
Okay, so
And we'll
between
put it out
now
there.
and then,
Hopefully,
we'll make sure that we, you know, we can kind of get Pioneer out there a couple of times to,
Well, I know they'll get it all nice and spiffy for the grand opening.
Right, that makes sense, that
right,
they'll.
so get out there before the 8th.
Well,
Is
this-
that?
yeah, that's gonna be part of the leverage here too,
Yeah,
you know, so.
right.
So I know we'll, you know, if you know when they're going out there, just shoot an email and
Okay.
we'll try to time it so that we get out there.
After
that?
After that, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can certainly
before
let
the
you know, I can let Mark know, hey, they just were out there, they
Yeah.
did this, they
Take a
did
look
that
at
and
it.
everything else, and then Mark can pass along
Yeah.
that to you.
That would be ideal.
It's a little hit or miss sometimes, with the contractor now, you know, because he's on the tail end of the job,
Yeah.
so he's starting 8 other jobs. You know, so that, but we're working with him on it to get things.
Well, and I understand the 8th is a big deal. So.
Yes, right, so
So we will continue our discussion.
Okay, sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Another little outlet piece that you added looks great.
Yeah, it was beautiful,
That
isn't it?
came out really nice.
That came out real nice. Yeah, that's a great little sitting area, and, yeah, that's, came out real nice.
Overall, I feel very positive.
Yeah, you remember the sketches I came in here and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
else?
Yeah.
You gotta do what?
What are the, tell us again what the stone, sort of oval stone
Those are gonna be,
structures
those are gonna be planters.
Okay,
Yes, those are two planters
Yeah.
that they're putting in there,
okay.
so they're gonna have.
Still asking about it.
I know you told us last
Yeah.
week, but I couldn't
Yeah.
remember what you said.
Yeah, they're gonna, I was
Probably
told
planted
they're
for
gonna,
the 8th, right? They'll probably
yes,
be-
they're gonna be done for the
Okay,
8th.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of kind of, now this is kind of like the trust's thing to do, so.
They might have mums in them, but there's gonna be something.
Yeah, right, something. They'll look
Yeah,
nice.
I don't think so. Believe me, there's a big planting plan going on with these things, with the, the butterfly bush and everything else that were gonna go in these planters.
Right.
It just needs a little bit of coordination and everything else and time to kind of muster the gang that's gonna be, doing these planters.
Can't wait to see.
All right.
Yeah,
Right,
so I'm
thank you.
expecting that's gonna be done for the grand opening,
I'm
so.
Sure.
Thank you. Are continuing that discussion?
That'll go to the
Yeah.
17th, yeah. So, emergency spill response, so after much back and forth with DEP, this is in response to that August 2nd spill from 91. And that was, initially DEP was gonna handle it, and then the LSP for the project, for the cleanup. Are you taking notes? Me, switching. Hi.
I was listening.
Oh, actively. Got in touch with us requesting an emergency cert, a 60-day emergency cert for immediate response action cleanup, which is all dictated by the Massachusetts contingency plan. You can see MR 40.00000. And I went back to DEP wetlands folks who coordinated with their BWSC folks on what we could and couldn't do, or shouldn't do relative to the timing of things. And basically, Mark Stinson came back and said, please issue the 60-day so that we don't have to issue an extension.
And we did that,
and we
right?
did that.
Last week,
Well, we said
or last
we
time.
said we would. We said we would look into it and do something.
Okay.
So I did, and I ran these conditions by DEP, and the special conditions that you don't have to, there were 5 conditions. Oh, the numbering here is messed up. Requested that all copies of all reports and written correspondence to DEP BWSC shall at the same time be provided in electronic format to the Conservation Commission, that at least 48 hours prior to commencement of any work authorized under the emergency cert, they notify us, that they provide a quantification of impacts to and alterations to areas subject to jurisdiction and protection under the Wetlands Protection Act, and that they provide erosion and sedimentation control plan, as well as a site restoration plan for all disturbed areas subject to protection and jurisdiction under the Act, including at a minimum detailed site plan showing the extent of disturbance to address the spill, soil sample locations, extent of vegetation clearing, and proposed site stabilization measures and vegetation restoration measures. And I note that implementation of the plan may be subject to further permitting under the Act.
She's not typing very fast.
It's okay, because I can copy and paste. But that's the gist of it,
What were the
basically.
first 3, 2?
You start over then?
Oh, yeah, that's everything else. Should I call the meeting to order? That we get copies of all correspondence with BWSC, reports and correspondence.
Copied on everything. Yep.
Yep.
What was another?
48-hour pre-construction notification.
But didn't they do most of it already?
They have to go back
In time.
We keep working.
Right.
and keep going. Erosion sedimentation control plan,
That was that wasn't the third, that was for quantification of impact.
quantification of impacts.
Yeah,
And site restoration plan
yeah,
that may be subject to further review.
yeah.
It all depends.
Yeah.
So, if it would be so
Sounds like a
kind,
lot of work.
Spills.
yeah, don't have any.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a fun thing.
So, tonight, would anyone care to make a motion to ratify this emergency cert that's valid for 60 days?
And what did, it's backdated or it's forward dated?
It's
Okay.
forward dated. That was one of the things I went over with, the DEP. And they requested that we do 60 days from today.
60 days from today.
Yeah, November 25th, 2016.
So
They
if
should be
you
able to
have
get
a,
a
s-
lot of work done.
if you have a spell, have it in a community without an agent.
That would be the moral of the story, yes. Please just
Take
stop.
3 months.
So is there a motion to ratify?
I would make a motion to ratify the
thought that was
emergency
Jessica.
certification as described by Melissa Code in detail.
Twice.
I'll second the motion.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
You actually want us to sign even though
Yes,
it's
I do.
here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, you're right.
Yeah, I wish. It'd be great. We need someone.
She's already wearing a big enough hat.
I know.
Does that have to happen for all spills, or just because it was like beyond a threshold of some sort?
And in the
Because they're
wetlands.
doing cleanups in areas subject to jurisdiction.
So,
So really, all that back and forth, the week the spill happened, the week leading up to between August 2nd and August 5th, that's when it should have been done, ideally.
All of this.
This, something like this should have been done. But, yeah,
How much
good enough.
is in the,
that's the quantification of that stuff.
do you have a general sense? I mean, it tipped over on 91, so it's kind of right
It
under.
ran down the slope,
Oh,
got into a storm drain,
And then it rains.
and then it, and then it, that was like the third time it rained this summer.
Yeah.
Summer.
And it's a lot of
And they
soil
didn't
that
contain
they
it
allow.
right
Yeah,
after
I mean,
or anything,
I
huh?
wouldn't know how to quantify it, but it's a fair amount.
Yeah, so, all right, I will take care of.
It's not a large geographic area so much as a.
But, well, it's a slope and then kind of a strip along the edge of the bike path.
This will on the bike trail was full of stuff.
And they probably pulled, I bet they did.
They
eat-
scraped the
eat
slope and they
wide
scraped the
interval.
swale out, and then it was kind of going into the woods, and they were still digging.
Yeah, I think it was this, the wooded slope
Mhm.
that they ran into trouble with.
Is it pretty obvious then if you're on the bike path?
I haven't been down there for a while, I'm assuming nothing has really filled in much, so yeah, it should be obvious. It's right by the 91, you'll see
Yeah.
It's right
activity.
under the bridge.
Is there anything else? Oh, you sent an email.
Yes,
You sent you sent two things.
two reports.
Okay, sorry.
I just want, we just
I
wanted.
just wanna take care of your business first so you can get on with your evening.
That's okay, thank you very much for that. Willis and Northampton, I sent a report on the cross-country trail, and in looking at the area, I'd like to get permission from the commission to remove the silt fence and wattles at the bridge crossing.
Should we
I
pick
can
it up
take a
for
look
tomorrow?
And you can take a
In
look
the
at
rain
it.
even.
Yeah, right, and
It's really working.
yeah, right. It's very stable. You know, that vegetation down there is better than anyone's front lawn. The way they grew it in, it's gorgeous. They hydro-seeded it nicely. And the slope coming down the hill is stable, there's no erosion. So yeah, if you can take a look at that. It's a good time to do it, because then that way, again, when they remove the wattles and silt fence, whatever is loose materials, sands, or soils will vegetate in quickly. They're slowly moving on to the 4 wetland crossings. So Jeff has got his crews in there to they installed the wattles and started to clear the brush.
And they did meet with Jeff that next day or whatever it was, and
Right.
he was just finishing up, so
Yeah,
we
right.
need him to go ahead to continue.
So there was a call, email, whatever, to the planner that she shared with the commission email, regarding the trails, and there was some concern, and the work that we approved, is all within the Williston property.
Correct.
There it was either a misunderstanding on the part of this individual that they were on town-owned land, city-owned land, when they were actually on Williston-owned land, or there are spray paint markings regarding cross-country trails on town-owned land adjacent to Williston-owned land, but outside buffer zone or riverfront where it wouldn't be our jurisdiction. Everything we approved for these trail improvements is on Williston land. That was very clear from the
Right.
plans,
Correct.
and there's no
Right.
concern.
And Jessica made that clear to the caller?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess, I just wondered if you, to your knowledge, there are any cross-country trail markings, on, like white spray paint on trees
Oh, wait,
outside Williston land.
There's definitely arrows and things, there's nothing that says like XC, but I of course could not walk there if you asked me to, but there's definitely spots that are further out.
Yeah.
Like I could wander around for an hour and
Oh,
find
there's
it, but.
all sorts of
But there's
trails
all
up
kinds
there.
of.
Yeah,
Trails
well,
up
and
there.
really,
Yeah.
the trails come in, the trails go out,
Right.
they're,
I know Williston
Very
had put
unclear.
blue
Mhm.
spray paint on their trails, which is on their property, most recently. It's in blue paint, so they must have had an event to keep their people on their trails, on their property.
But they aren't really supposed to have anything, for another month, though.
Any events on there, of
Any
course.
events, as I understand it, and so there's this window in here where they're supposed to get these crossings done, or else before there's a home event. You know, I don't know I'm not aware of them, painting up courses that are out beyond, their,
It could be 10
lands
years
or something
old.
like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
it could be.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the paint I'm thinking of
Does,
this
Oh.
one.
does
Yeah.
does the East Hampton Town cross-country
No.
painting?
No.
East Hampton High School doesn't,
No,
and
no.
Willowbrook wouldn't.
I mean, I know at least two major trails that come from White Brook Middle School coming through their property and down into the park,
Yeah,
and it gets used very heavily.
There's a lot of activity with that going on too.
I think it's resolving itself,
Yeah,
but I wanted to mention it and ask the question.
I can check with Jeff, see, but I know that when I was up there last Friday, I noticed that there was blue markings, and I followed the blue markings around, and they went around on the trails that are shown on the plan.
Yeah, that's
Back
for blazing
around.
our trail.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay, so
so,
yours are blue blazes.
yeah, blue.
So the markings that were reported, were they flagging tape or were they white markings or?
They were white paint
White paint markings, okay.
on trees.
See it in my mind's eye.
Yeah.
The good one?
New ones?
Yes.
You know, there's
Or no? Or
Not
just old
necessarily,
ones?
the ones I'm thinking of are definitely
You
old.
saw old ones,
Age
but
undetermined.
Yeah.
did.
Age not determined.
All right.
I mean, there's other thing, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I know, between the town and Daly Field and Nonotuck Park, there's all kinds of events that go on, and, some people go out there and, blaze bike trails and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of activity that goes on in there that it's understandable if nobody's aware of everything that's going on there.
Property lines are certainly not
Correct.
easily
There's no
determined.
fences
There's
or-
no
No.
warnings.
No, and even on Williston's property, I mean, as we determined on the original plans, people had been putting, bridges in across these wetland areas along these pathways. Williston didn't do that. I mean, that was just kind of like appeared.
Yeah, right.
So there was lots of stuff going on. And I mentioned also that, we still got, on part of the land where the soccer fields are in White Brook Middle School, you go into the woods right there, and there's a Frisbee course in there.
Right.
There's all of a sudden, there's goals all over the place in the woods in there. And that's not even their property, but whatever.
I have a question, if you're gonna go there, and I recall in the plans that the course.
I have the plan here. Would you like to look at it?
Yeah, do you mind?
I didn't want, not to belabor it, but
No,
this,
that's perfect then, because then I don't have to describe it. The trail goes, the course goes through the woods a little bit, and then comes down kind of at an angle to the bottom of the new bridge, and then the new. Oh, okay,
But I related to, okay,
so when I'm standing down here, so we came in. I believe on this trail, if
Yeah.
not this
Yeah,
one, then
originally,
another one,
right.
That
yeah.
was the original
Yeah.
trail.
Right, which is still open, but isn't it gonna be the existing?
That's
Yes,
Trail.
correct.
And this is, it seems like this was blocked off, and you
Well,
must have
yeah,
go this
well,
way.
well,
Is
here's
that
what
during
happened. Well, here's what and we've illustrated this on our plans, is that this old pathway, we put some plantings in here,
Mhm.
also, but-
Yeah,
and now this thing kinda comes around and kinda comes
So
into
it needs
here.
up here now.
Right,
Okay.
right, because, the survey shows there's a grouping of like pine trees down there and a few other things that, we would have created a lot of disturbance for and everything else, so we wanted to stay away from that. And so we made this trail come in up higher just a
Okay.
bit and missed that. So there was that piece of trail in there that we did some vegetation on, we put some native
Exactly.
plants in there, that's what we
Okay.
did there.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Now you get to wrangle us again.
All right, so, if you look at the big crossing on the or anything there, I mean, they have plenty to do with the other 4 crossings, so it's no rush, but I just think it's good timing to get it out,
Yeah, no
so that
problem.
the vegetation can get established.
That works.
Okay.
So could you ask Mr. Garska to pull the soil away from this silt fence here behind Lot 5? Doesn't it look like it's piled up against and if there's a wattle, it's underneath?
Yeah, it's double, so there's not a, yeah, I guess that one little section doesn't have a wall,
And that needs to be tacked up.
right? So I will do
While you're
that.
here.
Yep.
Yeah, just to, I imagine he'll be able to backfill soon.
Oh, they were doing it that day,
Okay,
last Friday, they started backfilling, so it's done now,
yeah, just,
right?
pass this around.
But what
So that's
what he's
lot
doing
5.
is creating a berm so that the erosion control barriers are higher in elevation than the
Straight.
dirt, like he did on lot 1. So it creates a dam hole in there, so when he does that, so.
Excellent, excuse me. Any other questions about any of this? Can we accept these 2, please?
Okay.
All right, thank you both
Yep,
thank
very
you.
much.
Yep. Right.
Okay. We have a lot of progress tonight.
So there's details.
Snuck out.
Okay, autumn property, so no updates on any enforcement orders,
Okay.
A through D.
There you go.
This one's you.
But E, we have a draft, thanks to Mr. Commissioner.
It's perfect.
It's, I'm sure.
E, wait, there you go,
May I
E.
ask a general question?
That's not how you spell that. Kidding? What?
May I ask a general question about enforcement orders? I could have sworn that somewhere I saw that you cannot open a new RDA or NOI if you have existing enforcement orders, but when I went looking for that again, it's only for that property. Okay, and where did I see that?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Cause I couldn't find it again.
I was wondering about it too. So this thing is not even Vertical's property, so.
It is, he owns 33 Florence Road.
He rents out the house,
Yes,
of course. But it's different than the other 2.
yeah. So there are rules about overlapping geographic footprints. So if you have an order of conditions if he had an order of conditions for the construction of the house and yard at 33 Florence Road, and he left that order of conditions open, or concurrently he filed this other permit application for work that connects to the sewer, within the same footprint of work that had been approved for the construction of the house and the yard, we would not be allowed to, there would not be another file number issued. He would not be allowed to get a separate file number for that, and it's an anti-segmentation thing. Unfortunately,
So
because
it
the
keeps you
different
from breaking the
skirting,
work up
right,
into.
doing exactly what he can do because it's a separate parcel of land.
And so that's why he doesn't have to connect the 2 across the street. I couldn't find the language on that either, but that's what I thought.
Overlapping geographic footprints is definitely a DEP policy. I'm not sure if it's in the regulations.
Okay.
I don't know, I've just heard it.
It's,
Like
there's
workshop.
definitely, there's definitely policy, like I've had to amend things to exclude a footprint and then permit the work in that footprint. Something blows that out.
Maybe it's a zoning or planning board thing too. I don't know if
Might
it's
be.
just wetlands.
Yeah, I don't know those rules at all.
Yeah.
I mean, could it be a registry of deed things too, if there were two different plans and permits, you know, in the same area, well, this parcel would be just way too confusing.
I don't know.
But if, say there was an open order of conditions on a parcel, like
Mhm.
say 33 Florence Road, he could still come in with an RDA, right, on that parcel, yeah.
But you can still do work even though he has enforcement order against him?
No, it's not on that parcel.
So he could have a million
Let's say
enforcement.
You could just have
orders.
like so many things over that.
As far as I know, yeah. There are some towns that go so far under their bylaws or ordinances to say, to make you get, some sort of signed, form from, I don't know, would it be the tax collector or the assessor or whomever, that basically says you're current on all of your payments and there are no liens on your property. But that, again, that's not a Wetlands Protection Act thing, that's a local ordinance thing.
Before that you can get a,
Before you can file
Get a
your
permit.
right, that's part of the administrative completeness.
but what if your taxes are, what if you can pay your taxes on a different parcel?
That's a good question.
I mean, if you want the work, it's kind of the same thing.
It is, but it's not.
So we could have in our
Like your uncle's brother's
local
cousin.
ordinance that if you have an enforcement order, could we add that,
Yeah.
if you have an enforcement order open on any of your properties? Is that not?
We
ever
would,
done?
I think we'd have to find out if legally we can do that.
We'll go to court probably.
I think we'd have to grandfather in certain individuals.
And then basically anything that predates the date that the, whatever local ordinance goes into place is grandfathered, because it was legal and lawful at the time. So, then it then becomes a thing where someone would have to demonstrate as part of an application that whatever exists on their property was legally and lawfully there prior to the magic date.
Speaking of
I
pre-existing
have no idea where to put this in
things,
the minutes, by the way.
General business, I don't know, this is just a discussion, but, sorry.
doesn't technically the fact that he jammed that pipe into a buffer zone make it work that wasn't approved, and doesn't that make it a violation? Because it's an alteration, even though it's not at the surface.
Wait, what do you mean jam that pipe?
He-
What legitimately jam
He
the pipe?
direct,
The pipe,
he
he
jacked
told
the
us
pipe
at the
under the
site that
road.
the pipe
Push it
is
under the
already
road,
there,
fix it
that he's
to
gonna
where
tie
the sewer
into.
connection is. You can't see anything, but that's what he says where it is.
There's already an existing pipe there?
He already got
Back to it?
authorization from the DPW to directional drill or jack or whatever method he used, the pipe from one side of Florence Road to the other.
That was in buffer zone?
Well, the backyards of these houses where the sewer line is running, this main sewer line is in buffer zone, so. If you can't see it, is it a problem?
And we're sure that he got the DPW approval.
Mm-hmm.
It already happened.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he says it's done.
Earlier this spring.
So why is he?
Because he wants to connect that pipe to the
Now he
sewer.
has to
Now
dig
he
a
wants to-
hole that's visible and.
Okay, because it'll be visible. I'm just wondering why we're suddenly involved.
Why did you decide to
I
do
didn't put
that?
it in it.
So then,
So I kinda like slept under the radar?
I don't know. That's a good point though.
but what was
technically
what
it
was
is,
the
right?
alteration?
We jack
There's
stuff
a
under
pipe there
stuff
that
all the
wasn't there
time,
before.
at time
He
and bottom.
displaced soil.
But if
With
you look
no-
at the definition
yeah,
of alteration,
and that's how
what's
we-
the alteration?
that's how we
There's no
avoid-
disturbance.
I don't know.
I mean,
What
what
is
is
the
the
technical
technical
definition?
alteration?
I don't have my regs with me. 3
Okay.
times CMR
There's
10.04.
no disturbance to the surface or
Oh, four.
to the.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that's like addition of impervious surface.
Like if you
But there's no
jacked a
impervious surface.
porous drain pipe
Pipe?
underneath
It's
something and then
5 feet
water.
Alter
could
right,
then
Alterate to change the
infiltrate,
condition
then
of
that would
any
be a-
area subject to protection.
That would be a
So
change
how did
in
he,
That'll be a problem.
how did
hydrology,
this change?
basically.
I'm just
There's
playing
a
devil's
pipe that wasn't
advocate,
there
but what's the
before.
pipe doing? What's
Holding
the adverse
stuff.
Like, I just don't
It doesn't
don't
have
have.
to
It's
an
the
adverse
next
effect,
steps that
right?
will cause the adverse effects,
Oh,
right? Like
okay.
if it gets attached to other things.
I guess what I'm getting at is we can't even effectively pursue gross violations. So if we're gonna start going after this level, then someone else has to take the lead.
Why don't the angry townspeople pursue the violations?
Because they're not angry with them. Because
they
it
can do that.
requires a level of technical understanding and support that we don't even have.
Do we know anything about what DEP is doing with these things?
No.
Look, we just got through almost
So-
all of 6.
I fully support
Unofficially.
your, Julie taking the initiative to contact Mark Stinson or David
At
Fallis
DEP.
at DEP and finding out what steps we could take. And Mark at least will probably say it's buffer zone, or Fallis will say it's buffer zone, DEP doesn't care. But
About the pipe in particular. What's Dave's name?
David, F-O-U-L-I-S. U-L-I-S.
Okay.
He knows the regulations incredibly well. But Mark is the circuit rider, so he'd be the first level to contact.
Okay.
I think it's 755-2257.
Say that again.
755-2257.
I'll check it. You have to.
It's probably right here.
Your recent calls.
No. No, just all my contacts sync.
And does the fact that it was approved by DPW,
That means nothing.
that wouldn't bring it into any exemptions for
No.
utilities?
No.
Okay.
The work within the paved road is exempt. That's it.
And he doesn't have to explain why this has happened.
Will
He
he
did
do the last
explain.
one?
He did.
He said that he was gonna put 4 houses on the other side.
of the street.
To my knowledge, he's not filed with the city.
Over under beds, it really can be just 4 houses.
And it's not entirely clear, maybe it's clear to other people, but I don't remember, enough about the original site visit that we did with DEP to know if those 4 houses are going to go in one of the places that were specifically talked about.
There's so much
With
land
tree
there,
harvesting.
I have no idea.
It seems like it
I
would
can't
be a
keep
lot,
track of
lot
what's where.
ways back.
But there was something that they were cutting, there was like some mysterious cutting going on, I think near the road.
Near the road?
There's no forest
Which
there.
road?
I
Near
thought near
Groveland
Florence.
itself? Or no, there's no forest there.
Yeah, that's what I thought when we were out there this time. But I thought there was talk about additional cutting in a swath near the road. That
There's
we
this
said, oh
one that's
no,
like-
that was just for cordwood.
That was off Groveland, I think.
Okay.
Those are the cordwood ones.
Just wanted to show, I can't even keep track of it.
Thank you. I appreciate your interest.
Sure.
Run with it.
All right.
So getting back to Autumn Properties, Boyle, rear 161 Northampton Street. This is basically Dan pulling together what we talked about. He was there too. That's awesome. There's a there too.
We have the context for the there too, please.
Flag the boundaries of the impacted area within the wetland resource area and the 100-foot buffer there too.
Very nice.
That
Good
may have
execution.
been in the sample document.
Oh, in that case, it was my pretentious use of there too. God.
Still good execution.
That's back when I had energy. That's
You had no more energy in 2013 than you do now in 2006. You probably had less. If your kids are anything like my kids, in terms of how much work they've taken as time
Do I
has
need to
gone on.
remind you of my, well, we need to make some edits here, because I do not believe the mayor's first name is Michael Karen Catcher. And Bob McCollum is no longer the
Oh, yeah.
section chief.
I didn't make your edits. I sent it to you to review.
Margaret, did you check the chair of the ZBA?
I checked, I don't know if I made the change that needed to be made.
Is it Margaret Solis?
I have no idea.
That John Atwater's not the health agent. Isn't that,
Something obviously got screwed up.
Duda, Jackie Duda?
That's what it said. Oh, maybe I changed the wrong one. That's what happens when you're working in a hurry.
Do you think John Atwater might be the ZBA chair? All right, so there are a few
Yes,
edits to
no,
be
no.
made,
Make some edits.
but,
Tell me what to say.
so,
Did that get emailed or
where?
anything?
No,
Yeah,
this
no.
is
Street.
I didn't see it.
Street.
No,
I also have a question about the grammar, it's implementing regulations.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That sounds ridiculous.
Possessive, those are its regulations.
It's regulations, but it's implementing?
They implement the act.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
the act has no power without its regulations.
So,
Except I'm not sure if that's really true, it just sounds good.
Flag the boundaries and buffer zone. Do you want them to flag the buffer zone too?
We're not flagging wetlands or buffer zone, we're flagging
Impacted area, got
boundaries
it.
of the impacted area.
Read all the words. Documents.
Wait, why? Why are we doing just those? Well, because I guess that's what we care about.
So we can know what to monitor.
Yeah.
And they're gonna have to pay somebody to do that, right?
Well, they can flag the boundaries of the impacted area. It's very clear where they impacted.
But they don't know where
Within
the
the-
wetland resource area is.
That's up to them.
Okay. Are we gonna check it?
Calling and do a comparison.
Yeah.
In all of your free time. Document the existing invasive species within the area, impact area. Including, and is that what you mean? Impact area, that's what I meant.
Well, in the impact area, there will all be no dots.
And adjacent, okay, within the
I think we want to.
area surrounding, immediately surrounding the impact area?
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap this up in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Including location type, species and density, develop and submit permission for approval of draft monitoring and restoration plan, the goal of which would be to ensure the regrowth of non-invasive vegetation and removal of invasive vegetation within the impacted area for 2 full consecutive growing seasons from the date of this order. This plan will be prepared, by a professional wetland scientist who will perform the monitoring. It shall include the frequency of monitoring and measures that will be taken to remove invasive vegetation within the monitoring period. Upon the acceptance or modification of this document, the recipient shall cause the plan to be enacted within 10 business days. The recipient shall cause the environmental consultant to monitor the, so do we want to say PWS or environmental consultant?
I don't know, environmental consultant, I guess.
Professional wetlands
Certification.
scientist.
I feel like I'm on my thesis defense here.
Short thesis.
By a
Well, I would a lot.
qualified.
That's to make up for my real thesis.
It was a little too long.
You're still reading it. Not this order. Further, by the end of the calendar year, we require you to establish permanent monumentation on the subject parcel at the existing limit of lawn at 50-foot intervals.
So it's monumentation.
Markers. Said monumentation
Both plaques that say.
shall
Wetlands here.
indicate in writing. Oh, it's a common for signage,
Like documentation.
the limit of the wetland, well, fine language, the wetlands behind the sign, basically.
This one has the right people on it. Or some of them, anyway.
No, that's
Well,
not
has
right,
it?
that's not right.
Oh,
That's-
Michael Karen.
It could be.
Can I see that?
Do you know where? It's just frustrating that we can enforce this.
Which is like, meh, and we can't manage to enforce these.
Well, we are enforcing this. These, we asked for DEP to come.
I know, it's driving me crazy that DEP isn't doing anything.
Well,
And that's what Carolyn Circle is waiting for too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What is this, where are we? Oh, sorry, there's
This
Forest
is
Road.
where we parked, right?
This
It's
is,
in
Dr. Sue.
Oh, perfect.
Then you go there too.
Not recently.
Well,
And
your
this
children,
is,
No,
is
not
this
recently.
your child,
ABC?
no.
No.
He does, but he hasn't gone recently.
Yes.
Underneath this
This is A to Z, right? Is
Right.
that where we parked behind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was.
So this
it was
is
all back
Mickey
here.
D's, this is Avashon.
Mm-hmm. And this is the parcel?
This is, these 3 parcels are owned by Autumn Properties.
Okay.
This is the parcel on which things have occurred.
And where approximately have things occurred?
I think they're like.
In that triangle area.
So some of those things are happening.
We'll see this.
Do you want to take this or do you want me to take a stab?
Oh, yeah, okay, never mind.
I'll take a stab. Yeah. Fair.
So then.
I just won't be working on your projects while I do it.
Yeah.
I'll be charging for your projects while I do it. No.
Do we, so once that's finalized, you sign it and send it?
Yes.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yes, sorry. I'm doing that.
So we will make these edits, one of us will make these
Yeah.
edits.
And you already knows it's coming.
Yeah.
And then we issue it, and so we shall never speak to this
I think
again.
that happened while you were on vacation.
It'll be on the agenda.
He knows it's
Right.
coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else for us to talk about? Seems like we had to punt. There are really no other updates to discuss, are
Are
there?
there any open space updates?
No, we're waiting, as far as I know, is for figuring out next steps with the orchard, we're waiting for, this is my understanding, we're waiting for Jess to put out a bid,
RFP.
RFP.
So request for proposals for people to put a bid on the project.
Yeah.
Okay. Julie offered,
Do you need to repeat?
earlier, yes.
I'm taking a
soil.
soils class, and I have to do a project, which is fairly ill-defined at this point, but basically looking at soils, geology, et cetera, characterizing a site. And so I was asking if there were any town properties that we'd be interested in having more information about along those lines, and we were talking about possibly the orchard as. So you said to email
Jess. Alan.
Jeff Allen, should I leave
And
both of
Jesse
you in
Allen.
as well?
Sure.
Okay, I'll put both of you guys on. I don't know why I wrote that down.
Jess and Jess. Okay. Do we have copies of the meeting minutes from?
These are the ones that you sent
Awesome.
recently.
Okay, August 22nd. Meeting was attended by not you.
You're
So,
that we approve.
the meeting, the minutes of August 22nd, 2016
I
is
second
presented.
motion.
All those in favor?
Alright.
So moved. We now have the meeting minutes from September 12th, 2016. Attended by everyone but Colleen.
Sorry. I move that we approve the minutes from September 12th.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Have we caught up now?
I second.
All those in favor?
Wait a second.
Aye.
Hold on.
Oh,
Tim's not in favor.
Jesus.
What?
Nay.
Sorry.
Ted wasn't ready.
Uh,
Can we overrule you?
Yes.